the guy who goes, quick, we must stop him, turn off the TV. And then the guy walks in with a gun, don't touch that dial. That's like a trope.
It's week 2 of our Christmas movie arc here on 4Play, and after the absolute tragedy last week of Batman Returns, I think we're safe for the rest of the films in this arc, because Scrooged was the one that I was most doubtful about moving forward, but I thought it was all right. I think It's a Wonderful Life and Tokyo Godfathers, very, very safe. Very safe. I've seen those more recently. Sure. But coming up, Scrooged is going to be our film this week to discuss. It is a film directed by Richard Donner, who did Superman, the original Superman in the late 70s with Christopher Reeves, and then Lethal Weapon, The Goonies, famously as well. So a pretty accomplished director overall. And this time he kind of teams up with Bill Murray on a modern take on the Christmas Carol story, starring Bill Murray as a television executive in the late 80s, which is fun because it's like the cocaine executive era, and he definitely plays that up.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, I was when it's kind of funny, and I guess we'll get into it further down the discussion, but this is one of those movies where it's like, it's you go on the internet and you look at what people think of it, and it's very, the ratings are kind of average, and it's like a 6-star movie in the eyes of a lot of people.
Okay.
Yeah, I was surprised. I think it's like 6.1 on IMDb, and yet
I would figure this would be a cult classic. This is like a fucking banger movie. It holds up mega well.
That's the wild thing, because it's like, I think about people in my life that I've talked to, and I go, name your 10 favorite Christmas movies. Well, I mean, it's not going to make top 5 for anyone, maybe, but like, it's always in their top 10. Always. Like, you get to like 8 or 9, and you're going, oh, and Scrooged with Bill Murray. I mean, it's like, it's one of those, tail end of the 80s movies. And again, I always thought this movie was a little bit hampered. It was a little bit neutered, I would guess, by studio interference. Although when I was doing my research, I couldn't find any articles about that beyond some quotes from the original scriptwriters. But because it's on the borderline of being a brilliant meta comedy, and I think the only thing that is a detraction for me is it has this almost like SNL sensibility where it leans into slapstick and cheap humor in just a couple of bits. And I guess it's because if you take that out, it's a pretty fucking dark film for about 70% of it.
Sure.
And I just think it's like, shit, this is a Christmas movie. The studios marketed this as, hey, it's Bill Murray versus ghosts again. Remember Ghostbusters? Bill Murray's taking on ghosts again. It literally said that in the original posters and commercials for it. And I think they were just like, shit, this movie is pretty bleak right up until the end. So let's, the ghost of Christmas Present is a fairy that kicks him in the nuts, and here's some silly jokes. Here's Bobcat Goldthwait with a shotgun. And, that's the only thing for me, because as I'll get to, I've got some examples. I really think this movie, had it not been tampered with in that way, we would have got this very smart, self-reflexive comedy that was sort of really ahead of its time.
That's why I do think this movie has value, though, because it's one of those movies where you can trick people. Like what you say is, you want to watch a Christmas movie, a fun one, and then you put this on, right? And the joke is, for half of it, they're going to think like, oh, fuck. And then, but it does have like it does actually do a sort of It's a Wonderful Life, beautiful ending where they bring together all the stuff, and it does have the Christmas cheer. Essentially, people know, like, this is another piece of Americana. This type of movie was classic to make in the 80s and 90s, where it's essentially like, even though the joke is the entire rest of the culture, like corporate, all that matters is money, bills, independence. Then they have a movie where they gaslight you every Christmas, like, but don't be a cunt, just give all that up and be good to your family and that. It's like, well, which is it? And then the joke is like, the same people making the movie clearly push the lifestyle. They're now like, but don't do that. Say a bunch of movie. The joke is, by the way, here's the real like meta contextual analysis of this movie. Every cunt who works in Hollywood is the fucking Bill Murray guy. So they make a movie like this to go like, save yourselves. But of course, I'm gonna have to stay locked in and get, that fucking VP of product job and they're going to have to work all night. But I'll tell you what, you guys shouldn't do it though. You should all go home to your families. It's like, thanks for the lecture, Hollywood. But one thing I do think is cool, because I always do this, right, is it's a little trick, by the way, out there. If people have a raw romantic side and they want to watch a movie with their significant other, what you do is you get a movie like that one I recommended before, Happy Accidents, and you go, it's a romantic comedy with a love story. And it is, but spoiler, it's got a time travel component in it that makes it next level. So secretly, you've sort of like, it's the sugar to make the medicine go down. There is some shit behind that. Because I agree, like, by the way, the best parts of this movie are just the Scrooge element. Like, they do an amazing job of picking someone. Because think about this, if you say, even that line sounds like some cancer meeting in the 80s in a fucking Hollywood exec studio. Let's update the story of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
The joke is, it's like what this movie starts as. It's like, what a stupid idea that is. But I tell you what, if you were going to do it, how would you make the modern Scrooge? That's what they've actually succeeded with. Like, the idea, he hates Christmas so much. He has that commercial, like, war, death, like an actual air bomb just going on.
That's what I mean.
It was the shit.
That's what I mean about it being so close. And maybe this is what they were going for, but it's just because, like, meta comedy doesn't really sort of take off until the 90s. Sure. Things get self-referential. People fuck around with established tropes. And, you know, by 1999, you get a film like Fight Club, which, you know, pretty much deconstructs how you tell stories through cinematic tropes. But, you know, like in the 80s, that wasn't there yet. And this is 88, you know, it's the end of the decade. And I think, you know, like, think about it. It is about, so to update Scrooged, it is about a TV executive updating Scrooge, the story, Christmas Carol. So he is having to do what the movie is doing simultaneously as we're watching it. And by the way, this movie, for a comedy, I think has one of the strongest, well-written openings. The first 15 minutes to this film is so dense in terms of how it tells the story, how it sets up the characters, how it sets up the premise. It's a really biting satire. It's, you know, the opening scene is Danny Elfman music. You know, he does it all the time in the Christmas movies.
He's back after last week. He was here last week. Exactly. He's back this week.
Elfman's everywhere. It's his season to be Elfman, right? But it's like it starts out like it's going to be a Christmas movie set in the North Pole with Santa Claus and the elves, and they're all there. And anyway, it's not that, because it's an action movie, and all these people come out and go, and you're like, what the fuck's happening? And then Lee Majors is there, and Santa Claus says, "Go get him, Lee. You've been a good boy this year." And then it just cuts, and you're watching a movie promo for the day the reindeer died. Yeah,
because it feels like a real movie.
Yeah, exactly. And what it reminds me of is there were a lot of movies like, you know, what was that one with bullshit or not on it? Fuck, I can't remember. It was called like It Came From Something, and there was Kentucky Fried Movie was another example. And there was this like, you know, there was this playful, you know, referencing to all these, you know, stereotypes in the entertainment industry, and it throws you straight into it. And then what you realize is you're watching like a sizzle reel of all their Christmas programming for the TV network that Bill Murray's going to be on. And it ends with them promoting this modern update of, you know, a Christmas Carol with acrobats and dancers and you know, Bob Goulet's in there for a Cajun Christmas in the swamp and all this stuff. And it's really
so
good, man.
It's so good.
The start of this film is really strong.
It reminded me from our 80s vampire arc of the start of Fright Night 2, which dove right into the B horror frame narrative, right? By having it focus on the TV at the beginning. But I just love how it immediately subverts your expectations. It's just so clever because you think you're getting into this Christmas film, and then, like you're saying, it turns out to just be a sizzle reel with a whole bunch of other hilarious garbage stacked into it. And at the end, you know, you kind of get the sense that, okay, here's all the new stuff that they would be doing in the modern era. But at the very end, here is the classic Dickens telling of A Christmas Carol, the period piece set in the 19th century with the leather-bound book opening and the old man in the chair, like reading, serving as the narrator, a la Masterpiece Theater, famously, right?
Turner classic movies kind of style as well.
Sure, yeah. And so, you know, it kind of runs the gamut of what would have been kind of possible in in 1988 when this movie came out, and does an excellent job of setting the tone, because then you're just thrust immediately into the boardroom with Bill Murray as the executive in charge of programming, more or less just being a giant drunk asshole to everybody there, and, you know, aggressively questioning people, shitting on the work that they've done, saying that it needs to be more bold. And that's where he comes up with what Thorin was talking about earlier, which is this trailer that features drug users and atom bombs, and is just completely designed to shock people into not missing this event, right? Even though the thing it's
advertised, your life may depend on it.
Don't miss Charles Dickens' immortal classic, Scrooged. Your life might just depend on it.
For Christmas Carol, the movie.
Which, by the way, is great satire on media.
Yeah.
You know, it's great satire on media, as if, you know, because the satire is, here we're showing you all of these awful things, but the thing you can't miss is the feel-good story of A Christmas Carol on Christmas Eve. And it just goes to show that the media will sensationalize anything at all, right? And misadvertise anything at all. And we talked a bit about that with Total Recall last time, too, the way that the media has been operating. And there's a lot of satire about it in this time period, like late 80s, early 90s.
By the way, this is also peak Bill Murray. This is when he's actually a legit film star, but clearly gets to like ad-lib and write like parts in the script himself, and is just doing the Bill Murray character. Like, the joke is, if you like the movie Groundhog's Day, there is a 0% chance you will not like this movie. Essentially, by the way, it's the same movie. Like, both his own personal development of the main character and the love interest is the same fucking movie. But I love that movie too. That movie also holds up, and that movie is straight fire. So I'm totally in for the I'm buying the ticket. I'm in for the ride. And the joke is, my favorite part of this movie is all the part before he learns his lesson and matures as a person. I just like when he's going around on a pure roast session, because he is just tearing the scenery up. Like, he is clearly like ad-libbing stuff. Like, he's so over the top with his physical comedy. It is mental. And then just think of some of the lines. Like, you know, I love to write down a classic quote. So here are some real quotes from the movie.
A few as well.
I want to see her nipples.
You can see her nipples.
I want to see her nipples.
But this is a Christmas show.
Well, Charles Dickens would have wanted to see her nipples then.
There's a good one out of context. Brilliant. By the way, think about that. He's also the scumbag modern day. Well, now it has aged badly because people are going, you should be allowed sexual freedoms. But at the time, he's the like degenerate fucking movie exec who's like, right, in this kid's thing about A Christmas Carol, we want to see her nipples peek out of the fucking, like, what literally looks like, you know, like a fucked up, like, not almost like burlesque fucking outfit that you're wearing as a dancer on this fucking thing. And then also, here's another good quote for you, is when that guy says, you know, about how, like, you know, about how you meet people on the way down that you met on the way up or whatever, right? Or it's that thing of like, you know, you got to be nice to people on the way up because on the way down you'll be hot. And he essentially says like, no, it's brilliant. Like, you get 2 chances to rough them up. You can fuck them up on the way up and the way down, which is just like, he plays the asshole character so fucking well. But the brilliance of this movie and Groundhog's Day is, obviously, if people don't know, Bill Murray has insane charisma. So when he wants to be the nice guy, you totally believe that too. He's actually got really good range. People don't realize it in these movies.
Yeah, I mean, just to go in as well for the quotables, because I agree. I mean, I think Bill Murray, you know, he owns the movie. I mean, it is very much a Bill Murray vehicle, essentially, although I think it's pretty rounded out with a good cast and some very interesting casting choices, which we'll talk about in supporting roles. But, you know, some of the quotables here, there's the bit where he fires Bobcat Goldthwait at the start, and his assistant goes, "It's Christmas," and he goes, "Thank you." Call accounting, stop his bonus.
I fucking love that, like, pure evil. Right. And then it's the way when she calls Richard, she just goes, but when she picks up, she just goes 9. Like, Code 9, and then put as all like he's just doing this in red.
I know.
It's great. I know.
He's fired? But it's Christmas.
Thank you. Call accounting, stop his bonus. Ooh, a clear shot at his back.
Elliot Loudermilk. Code 9.
And then there's the bit where his assistant's son is on the set, and he like grabs him and goes, "What are you doing here? Do you want to answer some questions downtown?" And she goes, "That's my little boy." And he goes, "All right, then you beat him." And it's
I know.
just so
They just leave it hanging as well. No one comments.
zing,
They're just
zing.
hanging there and then they move
You know.
on.
How'd you get in here?
Well, maybe you'll answer some questions downtown, huh, my friend?
What the hell is going on? This is my little boy.
All right, you beat him.
It's metal in it.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way,
the
Loki.
line as well where the guy's on fire and he said, like, referring to a real life incident where Richard Pryor set himself on fire. He goes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I thought you were Richard Pryor. That's what he says to the waiter that he puts out with the seltzer. I'm like,
That's
this is
good.
what I mean
That's good,
about
though.
it's like
Oh.
fucking and these lines, by the way, in this movie are going so fast. If you're not paying attention, they're just on to the next thing. I mean, this is why it had to be Bill Murray to do this role, like for sure.
So
And by the way, if you go on, do the premise.
yeah, let's. I mean, this premise is going to be extremely quick,
It's
just,
just-
because
it's
it
a
is a
Christmas
Christmas Carol. And guys,
Yeah.
guys, I'm not going to explain a Christmas Carol to you. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that shit's been out for 150 years. Like, figure it the fuck out at this point in time. So basically, we have the Scrooge character in this is obviously Bill Murray, who is this money grubbing, very ambitious douchebag executive that you've heard the lines from now. He starts and his Bob Cratchit is his secretary, whose name is what? Grace. And it goes through all of the Christmas Carol tropes. Obviously, there is the Ghost of Christmas Past, who is a devilish cabbie, like New York cab driver. The Ghost of Christmas Present is Carol Kane being hilarious as a fairy. And the Ghost of Christmas Future is still a silent skeleton, which it always is. So that's just what you get. Effectively, his love interest that he lost, so this time is going to be a woman named Claire Phillips, who works at a homeless shelter. And so that old love interest comes back into this. And he goes on the typical, Marley meets Marley, who is his old mentor / boss, which is a pretty funny turn as like an 1980s golf executive guy. I enjoyed the little bit with Marley coming back and kind of warning him. He goes through all of the ghosts, goes through exact same progression. Instead of Scrooge's nephew, it's actually Bill Murray's character's brother, who is the relation who's having the Christmas party. And then at the end, the undercurrent is that he is doing a live production on Christmas Eve of A Christmas Carol. So it's a Christmas Carol within a Christmas Carol. And he ends up on the set of the live version of the Christmas Carol, takes over the live broadcast as it's going on, and then has a very, very way too long speech at the end, and then everybody claps and sings a song. So there you go.
And then you're missing out as well. Continues to be sort of almost a meta comedy, because he then breaks the fourth wall while the titles are running on the show he's producing. The titles are running on the movie you're watching, and he addresses you directly as if you're singing along with everyone in the cast of the movie who are now singing Christmas carols at the end. Then it cuts to black, and then the titles are really rolling for real now on the real movie you're watching, playing a much more overproduced version of the song they were just singing. This is what I mean. They flirted with the meta shit and just didn't quite get there. They just didn't quite get there for me.
By the way, when you watch this movie, you, for the first time, get introduced to the character of Grace, the assistant son, the black secretary. If you don't hear that he's never spoken and that's the problem, and think, that's a weird Chekhov's gun to include, this surely won't be fired, and you can't predict that he is at the end going to say, God bless us one and all, just shut this down. Like, what we're saying to you must just be like colours on a screen. Man watches the screen. You know what I mean? You don't understand anything about narrative, because that's one part that. This is why I like this movie, though, also, because you know the fucking structure of the movie. It should be obvious, but it is just a fun ride. Like, one thing I even love, by the way, is even though it's just because it's a fucking 80s movie, yes, Bobcat Goldthwait is in this movie for no reason whatsoever. And if you didn't watch movies in the 80s and 90s, you're just going to think, why the fuck is this character who's ugly with a really weird voice in the movie? And let me just tell you, that's his job in Hollywood. His job is to be really ugly, to be the comedic comedic relief and to go, hello guys, and just talk like that. Like, go watch Police Academy, go watch all the movies with him in. By the way, all straight fire. Partly because he's in them, like, because the character he plays in this is so fucking stupid. It's just a guy basically getting perma-wrecked the whole movie. Like that scene where, you know, it's like, you know, he's just finally getting like, oh, he's on the streets, so he's just about to drink like the black, you know, the brown bag or whatever, like, and then he gets covered with the water, and then the bottle falls out. It's like,
You stinky! Yeah, you big dog! You!
like, even though it's the most low-grade slapstick humor, this guy was just a master at that style, and it is just funny. It does add the comedic relief. Normally, I'd think that's a bit whatever, but I actually even found that fun. I actually just think, in general, I would just describe this movie as fun. Like, it's like a roller coaster. You know where it's going. You know the thrills and spills, but, like, I think the way they handle, like, the first Ghost is fucking sick. And by the way, another example of a movie where, obviously, this guy did, like, Tales of the Crypt Keeper or whatever later. Like, the fucking the physical effects are fucking baller on that first Ghost. That looks great even to this day, in my opinion.
Well, what's super interesting is about the Ghost of Christmas Past, the first Ghost, who is presented as the taxi driver. That is actually the singer from New York Dolls.
Oh, really? Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Obviously, you
actually,
look like that because if people don't know, they used to do the cross dress, obviously, in that group. So you never recognize him. Fair enough.
David Johansen. And him and Bill Murray were friends. They were like New Yorkers, and they bonded on the set. Bill Murray, which really makes those scenes. I think they're probably the best interactions on the movie, outside of obviously Bill Murray with Karen Allen, because I mean she's like everyone's, you know, she's like your first crush if you watch those 70s and 80s
She's the ultimate
movie,
girl next door. You know what I mean?
She was,
exactly.
I mean, you guys probably know her.
The big doe eyes. Oh, well, can't everyone just be nice in every movie? You know,
and everybody loved her. Everybody loved her as well in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh yeah, that's her best role. Yeah, as Marion Ravenwood, like
in that one.
Just like slamming the shots at the beginning. It's great.
Yeah, but the interaction between David Johansen and Bill Murray in the scenes where he goes back and he sees his family and all that stuff, there's like an intimacy there that definitely you could tell they had a good relationship on set. It was a very tough shoot, apparently, because like Richard Donner wanted to do everything. He filmed the movie as if it was a live production. And it really pissed Bill Murray off because Bill Murray likes to go through the process of, let's do a take, and I'll improv. Just tell me what the rough, like where we need to get to in the script, and I'll just do a few takes, and then we'll all go and get lunch. And that's what he likes to do. But Richard Donner wanted to do it like super regimented, and he was like telling Bill Murray, you've got to be loud, and you've got to be big, you got to be over exaggerated, treat it almost like it's a stage play. And they just fucking hated each other. Like apparently they argued all the time on set. Bill Murray wasn't happy with the creative direction it was going in. He thought Richard Donner was stepping on his toes too much. And so him and David Johansen wasn't from that world, obviously being a punk singer. He like just said, like, you know, fuck it, you and me are just gonna tear this movie up together. And apparently they were like super eccentric on set. They were like partying and stuff. And I think it really comes across. Like all the stuff with the Ghost of Christmas Past is excellent. I mean, again, really, really good and very well done. Good callbacks.
It's well just written, the pacing of it is just so good too, and like I think it makes a lot more sense. Like I didn't know that he was the singer of the New York Dolls, but it makes sense if you see it, just because he is such a quintessential New York character, right? Yeah. He just slots right into that role, feels very authentically New York. But even right off the bat, like everything moves along at a very nice pace in those scenes, and you know. I think that's like the best slapstick bit in this whole movie happens right at the beginning when he just walks through the door and then Bill Murray just slams his head directly into the door afterwards. Just the prank that he's playing, and the reaction of the ghost to the prank that he's played is just delightful.
That was a great joke.
I love that bit!
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really good stuff. And, you know, in terms of like modernizing the kind of the archetypes of the ghosts, one of the things I really like about this is thematically the script is very fucking strong, because just to paint in the broad strokes on Bill Murray's character, which you find out via flashbacks, but also quite cleverly, you find out by just throwaway lines in the movie. I love this. I love that they just have throwaway lines about who Bill Murray is, like a character off the side will go, and you'll never guess what he did last year. And that's it. I don't need it. I don't need any more exposition than that. I know who he is from these little lines, and it really adds some color to the character. But what's great about it is when they do those flashbacks, what you realize is this is a guy who his father was like really hardworking guy, didn't have a lot of time for Christmas, didn't have a lot of time for family. And because of, his mother was, even though he loved her, she was kind of aloof because of the home dynamic. And so Bill Murray was raised on the golden era of TV. And then suddenly and now he's the president of a network. And suddenly you start thinking about, oh, yeah, because who the fuck, even in the 80s, would be doing a live action holiday special like that god-awful fucking Star Wars Christmas special, which, of course, was a running joke by this point as being so awful. George Lucas nuked it from fucking orbit, and you have to get pirate VHS tapes to even watch that now because it is so dreadful. But that's what Bill Murray's doing for this update of Scrooged. And obviously it makes sense from his character. He was raised by the golden age of TV. He's watching The Lone Ranger. Then when he's asked by the Ghost of Christmas Past, and he says, garden slugs have had better lives than you. And he said, no, you're wrong, because what about this? And as he reels off his memories of his childhood, they're all TV shows he watched.
I wanted to mention this because
on the prairie.
The funniest line in the movie, in my opinion, is the one where he goes like, yeah, but what about that time when I was in
exactly. Little House on the Prairie homecoming episode,
goes,
yeah.
No, you're thinking of Little House on the Prairie, and he goes, was it the homecoming episode? And he goes, yeah. And it's like, and it's like, you're right, his actual memories are just TV specials.
Yeah. And
that's actually hilarious.
That was the Little House on the Prairie.
Was it the homecoming episode of Little
Yes,
House?
it was the homecoming episode of Little House.
And then it tells you a little bit more about how he started at TV. He was on children's TV. He started out doing a children's TV show, and he was like, I must preserve the integrity of the Frisbee show. And it's just him dressing up as a dog running around. And he gets to meet the president of the network, the John Forsythe character that comes back at the start. And he blows off Karen Allen to go there. And that's the start of his, journey up. And he all the time, while he's going through this experience, he's monologuing a lot. And he's monologuing about I'm a widow because I'm a widow through business. I choose to live this way. Sure, I made some bad choices. Sure, it gets lonely, just on the weekends though. And he's fucked up his entire life pursuing something that's really empty and vacuous. And even and because of a love of TV, which was an insert for his parents' love, and what they do in the flashbacks, every flashback is told through a TV screen when they do the fade-ins, the fade-outs, the fades to the future. It's really clever, man. Like the framing device for the visitations from the ghost through that lens. This is what I mean. This is like a really good script that I just think, they just fucked it up a little bit with some of the more slapstick nonsense. It just didn't need to be there.
I didn't mind the slapstick nonsense so much. I think it adds some levity. My problem is as much as you start feeling for this character, so when we talk about the original Christmas Carol, right? In most representations of a Christmas Carol, the Scrooge character kind of, you get to see more of a slow transition. I think one of the big problems with this film is that the transition is at the very end, and it is so abrupt because when we talk about what actually happens in terms of the Bill Murray character arc, it's that he, even after he sees the ghost of Christmas Present, he goes back to Karen Allen, Claire, and then he wants to be with her because he had all these memories of the past, right? And so he goes into the present and he wants to be with her, and she's working at the homeless shelter, but he basically says to blow off the homeless people and that they're not worth spending time with. And he just kind of misses the whole point. And there isn't sort of a slow change in his perspective. It only happens, and quite frankly, kind of bizarrely, when he sees himself being cremated at the end. And then all of a sudden he's full of holiday cheer to the degree that he has to go and insert himself into this live production.
There is also the one where he meets like the homeless guy from the shelter and he's dead and all frozen underground. There's sort of that bit as well to foreshadow it.
Yeah, but it really just feels very rushed. And I think that's one of the main issues with this film is that for everything that it sets up, like I'm totally with you guys. I love the 80s retelling of this. I love the analogies they made. I love the meta commentary. I love the Christmas Carol within a Christmas Carol within a Christmas Carol, like Christmas Carol inception of this. You know what I mean? But the problem is that the ending is such an unsatisfying conclusion to his story arc. And honestly, the ending is, I think it's pretty badly written. It is really long-winded in terms of the direct address to anybody. And I don't even think is a very compelling capstone to Bill Murray's character, because it's almost like a Deus Ex Machina, like Thorin mentioned with the Tiny Tim character saying, God bless us, everyone. And it's not like he did anything. You know what I mean? In A Christmas Carol, the end is this of A Christmas Carol, right? Which is that he wakes up from his dream and then all of a sudden he starts to try and fix all of the problems, right? It's Scrooge goes and says, get the biggest goose and send it to Bob Cratchit's house. And then he goes and buys toys for all the kids. And you get an extended sequence of him doing good actions. And we never see that in this movie. We just see him saying like, can't believe you're watching TV, guys, go do something with your family. And he's just talking and not doing anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know, I get, you're right. You're absolutely right about that. That part is where it doesn't align with a traditional telling of this story, because essentially it's about a very selfish, wealthy person being presented with, you used to be a better person in the past. Here's where we're at now, and these are all the things you don't know about the people in your orbit. And this is the terrible future you're on course for unless you change. I mean, that's the fundamental, you know, aspect of the Dickens story. And so Scrooge at the end, as you say, does all this. It's about turning a selfish person into fundamentally an altruist and using wealth, which is another key component of it, which isn't really explored in this movie, but using wealth for good, which was a very, you know, Dickensian recurring, you know, kind of theme. But, you know, what I will say is, I thought it was kind of interesting because if you look at it, the way that it is, they're watching the TV that he's telling them not to watch, as the TV man sermonizes about how you should get away from the TV and go and do something good. And everyone at home is going, oh, yeah, we should do that now that the TV's told us that. I don't know.
But Richard, but here's the problem. Here's the fundamental underlying issue with telling people not to watch the TV in this case, because we, the audience, are watching the TV. Why?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
to have a revelation. So Bill Murray is trying to have a human revelation, which is exactly the same thing that the story of A Christmas Carol is trying to do. So you can't say watch this movie and have the same revelation as A Christmas Carol, but don't watch A Christmas Carol, watch Bill Murray interrupting A Christmas Carol for the same ending of A Christmas Carol. It's fucking weird.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If you think about the movie and I'm not saying they were doing this, but what I'm saying is I can almost read that as kind of another aspect of the satire present in this film. and that is that, yeah, I mean, it's patently absurd. We're watching a big budget, you know, Christmas movie starring Bill fucking Murray, where in it, Bill Murray tells you to not watch things because you should be out there doing good. Like, so I don't know if that was baked in, but because everything else is constantly flirting with this meta narrative and some of it very profound. Like the character that comes back is an actor called John Forsythe. And when he's giving his speech to Bill Murray about how being a TV executive doesn't matter. I used to be the man. I had all the women. I had all this, and now I have nothing. I had a heart attack on a golf course, and I'm dead, and I was worm food. And so that's John Forsythe giving that speech. John Forsythe was big in the 50s. He taped it off in the 60s, and then outside of And Justice for All in like whenever the fuck that was, 70 something, late 70s, he didn't work. He did fall off. It was all for nothing. And I'm watching this movie now. I don't know, maybe it hits different because I'm staring into my own fucking midlife crisis, right? Because we're of that age now. You watch this when you're a kid. It's haha, funny ghosts, Nutcracker Suite, all that stuff. You watch it in your 20s. Fucking hell, I'd love to be a piece of shit like Bill Murray, me. And then you're watching it in your fucking late 30s, early 40s, and you go, oh, I've wasted my life. So I don't know. Like, I think this
what?
movie
We
is
talked
going
about
for
video games, Richard.
no, don't. You're doing it. Christopher, you are the ghost of Christmas present.
That's actually why I think that this movie also works as a retelling. Because who the fuck ever watched A Christmas Carol and identified with Ebenezer Scrooge? He's one of the least relatable characters ever in a story. So when you watch A Christmas Carol, you watch it like you watch the old good Disney movies. Like, this is the good character, this is the bad character. Oh no, the bad character is keeping down the good characters. Oh, I hope there is a transformation, blah, blah, blah. Right? No one ever relates to that character. You can relate to Bill Murray in this one. Essentially, by the way, anyone in corporate America at the time would relate to him. Like, all the shit his dad says is the sort of like mantra, the internal philosophy that kept like grind culture going. Is the idea of like, you know, if you're actually a good employee, of course you're staying overtime, whether you're getting paid it or not, because don't you want to make it? Aren't you a winner? Aren't you part of our family? What do you mean you're going home to your family? Like, what about doing this? Like, you know, when you're going off doing that is when the guy who stays gets the promotion and he gets the job you want. And essentially you could even tie in, there's almost like a Faustian element, because you are just giving everything in your life up for either, could be money, in this particular case it's sort of like status within a corporate structure, whether you then feel like you have power, etc. But the joke is, like Faust, like, to what end though? Because essentially you lose everything that actually matters in life. You gain just worldly trinkets and you lose essentially your soul. And if people don't know, there's many retellings of Faust. One of the most popular ones isn't that at the end he's just damned to hell and it's like, oh, don't do that. At the end of one of them, essentially, he just sort of realizes that it was all fucked up and it was all for nothing. And he like commits his life to like charitable deeds and doing good in the world, etc., which is kind of what they're trying to hint at the end of this
allude to it,
also, I also thought another thing that ties into what we were talking about at the beginning is, I do think this is like The Player, Richard. I think this is something where it's clearly people in the industry
what I was thinking,
trying to wink like that. Because another thing that's mad is, not only is this the perfect example of like the Hollywood corporate exec in the 80s, but two aspects. One, it's that whole sequence that doesn't have to be in the movie where it's just explained to him that dogs and cats are going to be watching, so we should start trying to get them hooked as viewers. That is exactly the sort of stupid focus group thing that is going on to this day in Hollywood.
And then they're actually doing that now. Yeah.
I've no doubt. Yeah. And then the other angle like that is when he wigs out because he's seeing the eyeball in the glass and all that shit inside the restaurant and someone on fire. The joke is, the reason why that is, like, in a normal movie, if that's he's a doctor, right, you're immediately taken off. This is a high stress job. You're clearly losing again. No. The joke is, because he is a mega high exec in the 1980s when they're all on cocaine, living the most outrageous lives ever as a stress relief, the assumption just is it's just stress. He's got a very stressful job. And if you don't know how movies worked back then, because if you spend $10 million and a dickhead walks off the set and the movie isn't made, you have burned that money in a hole. They would put up with anything at that era. If you're a star, you can be in the trailer wigging out. As long as on camera we get the fucking cut, it's all good. Essentially in this scenario, like, the joke is, as long as he's hitting his deadlines, they will literally overlook him, like screaming, doing some mad over the top acting. So there's even a like sort of a commentary in this about how, like, just like it's expected that you'd have high stress and just be like falling apart if you do that job.
You know, they're not going to show the hard drugs in a movie like this, obviously, but, you know, they do a very good job of implying to you, the audience, just how fucked up this guy is at all times. Because one of my favorite things is just the silent thing that happens in this movie is it starts with him pouring like a tumbler of like half a glass of vodka and then like some of a can of Tab. And by the end, guys, he's pouring literally a whole tumbler full of vodka and like a splash of Tab, just like
Shoxy Red Bull, if anyone comes to catch.
He's basically on the Shoxy Red Bulls. Yeah, he is. But get this. Here's another reason why I think it is just mega meta commentary throughout, right? So in that scene that Duncan's talking about, where Robert Mitchum, again, fantastically casted as the
insane that he's in it,
TV executive. Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I love Robert Mitchum, you know, like. And anyway, he says, now, do you know how many cats there are in America? And he's like, I don't have those numbers to hand, sir. And he said, no, it's like 26 million. You know how many dogs? It's 38 million. We spent 4 billion on pet food alone in this country. We're gonna make programming for cats and dogs because it 20 years, they could be long-term viewers. And Bill Murray goes, absolutely, I'll get right on it, and takes the document. And then Robert Mitchum suggests, he goes, are there any mice in A Christmas Carol? What about a detective whose gimmick is he dangles a bit of string like Kojak with his lollipop, right? But then in the next scene, when John Forsythe comes back, inexplicably, there's a hole in his head and a mouse pops out and starts playing with a ball. And then there's a bunch, like, as that scene ends, before Bill Murray passes out, there's a bunch of like rapid jump cuts where you can see the mouse like jumping around and that. And I'm going, they did the fucking thing. They just did the fucking thing that they said they were going to. They baked programming for cats into it the scene after they talked about programming for cats. There's no way that's a coincidence. Because why does that need to be there? Why is the mouse playing with a golf ball? It can't just be we wanted to show that he was dead. Bill Murray empties a clip into him. I know he's fucking dead. So I don't know, dude. Like, it's like I say, I think this movie, it got up to the line of like true way ahead of its time greatness in the same way as you said, the player did, and it just didn't quite get there. I think they
doesn't stick the landing, man. Like the ending is so weird.
It's only a very good movie. It's not a great genre blending, mind bending, meta comedy progenitor movie that it could have been. I agree. And
even with all that said, the scene where he is being actually cremated is straight fire and will stick with you forever. Like the second I saw that, I instantly remembered that whole like location, the way he goes, the way it's even shot. Like it's actually also, by the way, a pretty well put together movie. Like you say, it doesn't drag. The pacing's good. It does everything it needs to do. I thought it was pretty well put together. Yeah, Richard Donner's just a good director.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, about Richard Donner, because he's probably one of those directors who is like largely forgotten, always had a fantastic eye for a set piece. One of my, he's definitely in there as like one of my, I'm not going to say favorite directors, but low key, like a director I've always respected, because obviously he did The Omen. And The Omen is one of the first one is one of those movies which, man, that shook me as a kid. My mother used to do all sorts of fucked up stuff when it came to letting me watch movies I shouldn't be watching. I saw like Don't Look Now and like the fucking Omen before I was like 10. I was like absolutely like brain broken. And obviously you think about the set piece in The Omen with the sheet glass cutting that dude's head off, or the fucking thing falling off the church and killing him in the graveyard. Richard Donner shoots amazing set pieces. This movie's full of them. This movie is full of them. The bit with the Ghost of Christmas Future, really well shot, quite scary, like when he opens up the cowl and there's all the lost souls trapped fighting for space between his ribs. Which
and then they make it a joke at the end.
They shouldn't have done that. They're all drinking eggnog or something at the end.
They're like singing. You're like, what the fuck, man?
It's the sort of, Muppets Christmas Carol type thing that I love, though, at the end of that silliness. Like, exactly, I know the idea. They're all vibing as well. Like, the Grim Reaper's in on it too. Loving it. Oh, Christmas baby.
Yeah. It was a little bit silly. But, I mean, like, I think Richard Donner, I'm trying to think, because like it was, I want to say it kind of feels like once he got into the 90s, it was kind of downhill, unfortunately. Did Superman, huge, did the Goonies, huge, did The Omen, huge, did the Lethal Weapon series.
Everyone forgets that one, mate. Have you never noticed how every big action series, the director's legendary, no one fucking remembers he did Lethal Weapon.
I know.
They just think Mel Gibson somehow did it as an actor or something.
He did Maverick too.
Did all four? Yeah, Maverick is a weird one.
Did lots of movies with Mel Gibson. She did that Conspiracy Theory one, which is a pretty good one, actually.
Theory as well. And it's like, you know what? Like, put it this way. I will say, with like maybe one or two exceptions in his oeuvre, I can't think of a Richard Donner movie I hate. I can't, like, even some of my favorite directors have churned out like a piece of shit that I'll just never watch again. But like a Richard Donner movie it's very appropriate for what this movie is trying to achieve as a satire about the entertainment industry. Because, this should be a sensitive drama, a retelling of A Christmas Carol, where a naughty TV executive learns a lesson about life and altruism. Nah, fuck you. Here's a big set piece with death, and here's like fucking, remember, he still has to shoot that shootout at the start in Santa's grotto. He starts to film that, right? It's not just there. He didn't just pull it from the archives like Kiss Saved Santa. You know what I mean? He had to shoot that. And so this movie is actually, there are moments in it where it is shot like a very typical 80s blockbuster film. It's got that feel to it. It's got that quality. It's got that sheen. But actually, it's a sort of, at its heart, it's a sort of a sweet little comedy that shouldn't be as well produced as it is. It's a super interesting film.
You know, my other issue with the tone of this film is that, you know, the Bobcat Goldthwait character spends the entire movie just being a sad sack and then being the butt of a bunch of slapstick comedy jokes. And then he comes in at the end and is actively trying to murder Bill Murray with a shotgun.
Yeah, I don't know how his story ends, realistically.
So, you know, while we're, I think it's just very totally odd that while we're getting treated to Bill Murray on camera having this extended monologue about the value of Christmas, we simultaneously know that Bobcat Goldthwait's character is holding people hostage in a production control room with a shotgun because he was told to by Bill Murray's character. So it
you have to understand, Monty, that's a classic Hollywood theme where it's okay to take, like, for example, like John Q. You can just take a whole hospital hostage if you really are doing it for the right reasons. And at the end, you will, in real life, totally, guys, definitely believe this is not legal advice. You will just be forgiven because ultimately it is a movie and everyone saw your POV. So what you did was justified. So at the end of the day,
you were the
Christmas,
main character all along.
Exactly. When he has that shotgun inside, that is just like, this should almost be darker than they're putting it on as. They're just making this like it's cool. Like, this is mad that he essentially just tell him, like, I'll blow your head off and you take us off.
But here's the thing. They actually need that in there because it's the only reason they wouldn't turn off the live feed when Bill Murray ruins the special. So you actually do need a reason. And so they cover the plot hole with it. Unfortunately, the thing that they cover the plot hole with is like very deeply uncomfortable and also just makes you wonder what the fuck happens when they turn off that camera and the police arrive and then all of this gets untangled. Because then you're just like, well, I guess the newspaper headline the next day was psychotic TV executive takes over studio with, you know, gun-toting madman and broadcasts bizarre Christmas message to New York City. Like, it doesn't end well.
Definitely what happens. What happens is Bill Murray's character obviously gets away with it. He's great. He has to turn a heart. We all understand that. It's just that this deranged lone nutter who used to work there, he gets everything pinned on him as the patsy. Bobcat Goldthwait does go to prison, definitely. And then that's just, you know, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelette. What can I tell you? You know, not everyone's going to make it through a Christmas Carol at the end of the day.
It's worth it for world peace and love, Monty.
Okay.
But put it this way: you've seen it plenty of movies. You know that at this particular time across the 80s and 90s, this is a trope in and of itself. The guy who goes, quick, we must stop him, turn off the TV. And then the guy walks in with a gun, don't touch that dial. That's like a fucking trope, dude. That happens like a billion times in movies from this time. That happens in fucking Running Man. I want to say like Halloween 3 flirted with that idea with the fucking signal for the Silver Shamrock masks. It's like, no, I'm missing a ton of them. But yeah, the idea of someone, we will stop the signal and the truth won't be noticed. Don't touch that dial, motherfucker. It's a classic. Everyone does it. And it's another reason why I think even if the end is bad, it's actually bad. I won't go deliberately. You always get triggered if I say that. It's bad on purpose. The Fright Night defense. No one likes it. But I'm just going to say, like, I think they were going for something else here. I do. I think, like, yeah, because think about that premise. Bill Murray's had a complete 180. Oh, isn't that good? He's learned his lessons. Oh, no, he's manipulating a psychologically damaged man to hold everyone hostage while he proselytizes on TV in another narcissistic showering. It's like people who go, thank you, you got me out of the right-wing pipeline. Now I have gone down to the left-wing pipeline. And it's like, no, the whole point is don't brazenly follow any dogma and fucking think for yourself. Bill Murray ain't doing that. He's still traumatized over the fucking crematorium scene. So, you know, I think I always give movies too much credit if I like them, I guess. I actually I thought this was great. I mean, put it this way: compared to the horror of realizing that everything we thought we knew about Batman Returns was a lie, and nostalgia is the most powerful mind-altering.
Oh, this was the pick me up I needed, mate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
This
totally.
was,
I agree with it. This was the ultimate palate cleanser. Thank God.
Yes.
But yeah, I had a lot of fun with this. I mean, fun is the right word. I think it's probably a smart choice to include silly little things. Like I don't really like can't remember her name. Is it Carol Kane who plays the fairy?
love Carol Kane. I love Carol Kane in this. I think she's great.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I have issues with like slapsticky stuff, and it feels like a relic of the SNL stuff. Bill Murray's great with physical comedy,
But
obviously.
you also have to remember that like even Carol Kane's insertion into this movie, because she's a legend from the Taxi television show that took place it's like a quintessentially New York TV show, right? So her appearance in here makes thematic sense with kind of the rest of the casting that we've discussed.
Sure.
And this is just who Carol Kane is. She's like weird with a weird voice, and she's quirky, and I think she's actually one of the more entertaining parts of the movie.
So happy, but so poor, you tightwad.
I'll check my records. She made me due for a raise.
Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
I am.
Probably. Perhaps.
I'm almost positive.
Yeah, maybe. I don't like the whole, kick you in the balls, headbutt you, slap you. It gets a bit Three fucking Stooges for me, and I never like that. But it's probably deliberate, because again, Richard Donner obviously has fucking Start a Lethal Weapon. Fucking, Riggs is fucking doing it when he pulls the fucking gun on him. So I guess Richard Donner was a Three Stooges fan. But I don't like that. I think that stuff's like, it's a childish throwback, but probably, again, because I'm going to give the movie too much credit, probably deliberately so, because it's really about the golden age of TV deep down. There's loads of one-liners and references in this, by the way. Like, when he's like on the set fighting and he goes just like Errol Flynn, and there's loads of like references to the golden age of TV, like super subtle. Like,
But that's what Carol Kane is she is a reference to the golden age of TV.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. It's just what she's doing. I don't like. I don't vibe with. Like, you didn't have to make the Ghost of Christmas Present, who ultimately, maybe out of all of them, is telling the most profound part of the Visitations, because it's where he realizes, my own assistant Grace, she has a child who saw his father get murdered, and it's traumatized him, and he doesn't speak, and he starts to realize, and there's my brother, and he's made me this wonderful gift, and here they are playing like Trivial Pursuit or whatever, and it's like I think the profundity of that segment is diluted by the silly "I'm gonna headbutt you and I'm a girl" thing. Like, I just didn't really. I don't know. For me, that and the end are the two weakest parts of the movie, but not in a way where I'd go, "I'm turning this off" or anything. Like, it's not like ultimately the Bill Murray roller coaster, the Bill Murray Express, is so good that who gives a fuck if there's like some little tonal distractions. And the opening is so strong, it really draws you into the film. You want to know what journey Bill Murray's about to go on, right? Like, because even though he's a piece of shit, he's such a charismatic piece of shit. You want to know. You want to know where he's going to end up. So, I mean, this for me, I was surprised with all the sixes. I also, hang on, I got the Roger Ebert.
I feel like 6 is dead on for this movie, frankly.
I guess he likes this. I'm going to think he gives it like 3 stars.
Is that where we're at? So
yes, that. What do you think?
Okay. Well, let me. Hang on, sorry, I meant to have the link open, ready to go, but I kind of came a bit tardy to this one. So no, he. Long story short, Roger Ebert didn't really like this movie, and he said, "Where's the quote?" Fuck. Hang on. I gotta get this. Sorry. Go make another point. I'll be with you. We can have it.
I'll make a final point on the meta-ness of this movie that I find kind of odd, which is like, the kind of old and tired joke now about how people in zombie movies like don't know what zombies are, so they can't like identify what is actually going on, because apparently the concept of zombies don't exist in their fictional universe. You know what I mean? And I feel like what's so weird about this film is that it's almost the same thing here, where Bill Murray's character doesn't understand the concept of Scrooge's ghosts in A Christmas Carol, except we know he knows about A Christmas Carol because he's making A Christmas Carol. So it just feels even weirder that he is confused about what's going on.
But with the Ghost of Christmas Past, he goes, yeah, it's a time travel thing. And you're going to make me cry.
Sure, but that comes later, and shouldn't he have recognized it, I don't know, immediately when this whole thing started?
Right. So I've got the Roger Ebert review now. So I don't know. Duncan, it's going to blow you away. Right. You know how he's got the 4-star scale? 1 star.
Holy moly.
Roger Ebert strikes again. The 4th member of this podcast from Beyond the Grave, doling out bad reviews.
There's nobody fucking pictures from what's going on, Roger?
Right, there you go. I'll read you the quotes. Scrooged is one of the most disquieting, unsettling films to come along in quite some time.
Really?
I don't know what for real.
What movie is it?
Out of all the films he watches professionally, this is the one where he's like, truly, this shook the foundation of my soul.
He said it was obviously intended as a comedy, but there is little comic about it. And indeed, the movie's overriding emotions seem to be pain and anger. This entire production seems to be in dire need of visits from the Ghost of Christmas itself. And then he ended with saying, the worst part, you can't badmouth the Christmas Carol all the way through, which I don't think the movie was doing.
I don't think it does.
And then expect us to believe the good cheer at the end. In his studies of Dickens in preparation for this role, Murray seems to have read only as far as Bar Humbug. That was his review. Roger
Also a terrible piece of writing, frankly.
I know. Listen, people don't want to hear it because he died and everything. And he did, he did do a lot for movie criticism. He was a fucking hack. Like, he was an actual hack and a fraud and a hack fraud. I want it on record. You can't give this movie 1 star. That's outrageous. That's so out of pocket.
That is weird.
So out of pocket.
Like, to me, this movie is a strong 7 out of 10. It's not an amazing piece of film, but it's a strong 7 out of 10.
And do you know what? The 7 feels bad because it really flirted with an 8.5 or a 9.
I know what you mean. Like, if they'd leaned into that, like, sort of the player satire element more, it could have been a genius film. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and
it could have had another layer to it.
That's where you probably do need a more visionary kind of director than maybe Donna, because I wouldn't describe Donna as a visionary. If this was like a
Terry Gilliam movie, it would fucking bang. I'm telling you.
Yeah, actually would. And by the way, if you look at some of his other stuff like Baron Munchausen, perfectly within his wheelhouse to do a movie like this. Yeah,
he would kill it.
Yeah,
I've got a couple of notes. Here's 2 quick things.
I've got a couple as well.
Even though she's not in the movie much, I actually do think Alfred Woodward, who is the black secretary woman who's been in 1 million movies, you've definitely seen her loads of time. She essentially is like the female version of Morgan Freeman. Like, are they ever bad in a movie? Don't they just always do their job to a good level? You can even imagine they're just typecast that way, because if you want someone to play like sort of the fucking down on their luck mother secretary who has a mothering instinct even to an arsehole, like, she just nails it. Just nails the tone completely. Perfectly done. A great reaction when the kid does the shit at the end. And then the other thing I thought,
that's interesting, actually, Duncan. Just to talk about that point a little bit. It really does add something to the movie that she doesn't hate him. It really helps his character, actually.
Like a mother, only mother could love it.
That's the thing, is that Bob Cratchit doesn't hate Scrooge. Bob Cratchit actually defends Scrooge to his family, who is shit-talking Scrooge. And so I think it's actually core to the story that the secretary character, Bob Cratchit is Scrooge's secretary. It is core to the story that Bob Cratchit, the person closest, or Grace in this case, the person closest to the Scrooge character, believes that they can be redeemed.
Also, her name is literally Grace. Just look up what the word Grace means.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right there in the script,
absolutely. Yeah, very much. What was the other point? Sorry,
just a quick one, but it's one of those things I love of how stupid things are that are visual language that you immediately know what it means and you just accept it. So the way, remember, without technology, the way they make Bill Murray really young, just do his hair like he's just come out the shower. Yeah. We're all like, holy hell, that was crazy back then. Same exact guy, totally like seeing his settings also, because we haven't got a really massive budget for this. Just get his hair, just fuck it up with some like gel. It's like, bloody hell, I'm young Bill Murray now. I love it. I just love that you say it and you go, is that really what they're doing? I just accept it. Yeah, all right. Well, I'm in. Just go on.
There is every type of bad 80s haircut in this film, to be fair. Like, absolutely every type. I'll tell you what, this is just another point, and I couldn't work it in naturally to the conversation, but for the people watching, they might be interested in this. One of the things that I was fascinated by when I was doing the research for it was the screenplay writer, the original screenplay writer, hated the finished version of the movie. And the quote is, we wrote a fucking masterpiece, referring to him and his other co-writer. We wrote It Happened One Night, obviously the classic movie. We wrote a story that can make you laugh and cry. You would have wanted to share it with your grandchildren every fucking Christmas for the next 100 years. The finished film was a piece of unadulterated, unmitigated shit. That was his take on it. The guy who wrote the screenplay. And that's like a pretty fucking strong condemnation. And this is another reason why
Ebert's best man.
No, he actually agrees with Roger Ebert, yeah. But like, so not even Siskel agreed with him. But I think this is why I'm inclined to believe that actually there was a better film in there somewhere, and for whatever reason,
they did focus group the fuck out of it and probably put all cynical shit in.
Yeah, exactly. And
the joke here's what my guess would be. I'll even guess something mad. Like the main movie exists, but then they really did just like he got to the set like, oh, we're filming today, and then like Bobcat Goldthwait comes in like, who's he playing then? And like that character's just inserted or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I say that it's just a character that guy played in.
Yeah.
Like I could easily believe they did all sorts of shit to this movie.
I think that one thing that they could have changed is like clearly there could have been a darker ending to this movie or a more satirical or edgy ending where it wouldn't have been the whole feel good long speech sing song and dance number that it's at the end. Like there is definitely a way to end this movie that keeps the satire intact and makes it even more biting. And perhaps
I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you how I would have ended this movie. He has the epiphany. He's had the ghosts. He's had the visitations. He gets live onto the set. He's doing all the bit where he's like, oh yeah, there's one girl I love. She comes running to the studio. That's when Bobcat Goldthwait comes in with a shotgun, blows his fucking brains out on live TV, end of the movie. There's your fucking Christmas movie right there. Just as he wakes up and has the epiphany, Bobcat comes in and kills him, gets arrested. It's all me. That's your film.
It would be interesting.
More people will be talking about it, mate. Get me in that fucking focus group.
I didn't know you were going to go with that ending, though, because I thought you were going to go with, this is like another plausible ending you could do, is to make it truly a hilarious joke on itself. At the end, after the credits finish running, it cuts and it's a scene with him with his boss. And then his boss goes, you know what? I was wondering where you were going with that, but that was genius. Here's an even bigger promotion. And for Easter, I want you to do something really special. And then he goes sort of like, and then, you know, it's like the phone's ringing. It's that woman. He's just like, tell her I'll call back. And it's like the idea is he never learned anything after all.
Yeah,
I like that, actually.
TV in it, you know.
I love that one. Because the whole thing is that he was already trying to do the...
basically.
Yeah, but he was already trying to do the extreme thing in terms of advertising this, and I think he accidentally makes must-watch TV and then has to cynically top himself later. I agree. I think that's the actual ending, man. I think that would be great.
Because as I say, I do think part of why these movies are allowed to be made, because it's like the concept that people don't understand of like, why would a system that you agree is like oppressive and propagandizes you, why would it let in like rebel forces like to come right in like on a Death Star run and destroy it with whatever it might be, let's say cryptocurrency or something, all these things that people think, oh, it's that's the rebel. It's like, why would they allow it though? So in the same way, why would Hollywood make a movie where it's about don't watch TV? Also, corporate culture, including Hollywood culture, is corrupt and terrible and bad for humanity, and essentially everyone who just does this instead of their family is a piece of shit. I think, like I say, it's like a fucked up way of them getting it off their chest and sort of being like, but I did warn everyone else though, like, don't be like me. Oh shit, oh, you're gonna have to just blow me, I guess. I can't go home tonight. Like, oh, but this is terrible. Oh, I wish I had a fight. You know, it's like there is almost an insincere little bit to the movie where it's like, you don't really believe this guy. It's like the joke is you would like have the guy walk in after you made this movie pretending it's all heartfelt, but then you also get back to the office office on Monday, and then the guy goes, loved what you did with Scrooge. Scrooge 2, when's it coming out? Easter, and this time it's personal. You know, like they would just do that. Like that would literally be what these people would do. So like there was an aspect to me where I almost thought like the joke's sort of on the people who made the movie as well. Because it's like, you are just this system though. Like I don't really buy that you really, like you're just doing this to get it off your chest. Because like at the end of the day, that is corporate culture, isn't it?
You've actually nailed it. If we merge both our endings, it is actually the perfect movie. Bill Murray gets killed at the end, live on TV. Everyone's sad about it. But then it cuts to Robert Mitchum and that guy who was Bill Murray's understudy going,
oh, the LA guy.
Right.
All right, I'm into this.
Top that? How are we going to top that next year?
I like this.
How are we going to get someone to die on TV again next year? And it's like Scrooge 2, for, you know, in memory of Frank Cross. You know, like, so, there you go. Now we've done, this is why we need a workshop. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Jesus and Frank Cross in double cross Scrooge 2.
Double cross. That's brilliant.
Featuring 34 minutes of Bobcat Goldthwait. Is he just fucking the director? So how is he in this movie so much? Like his character does nothing. It's so stupid, isn't it? I know, but it is fun. Like I say, you just have to enjoy it. You have to just sit back and enjoy it.
So yeah, man. I mean, look, my final thoughts about this is because we got these next two tearjerker movies coming up. This is about as kind of saccharine as I can get in my Christmas movies without it like just breaking me. Like I'm already trying to mentally prepare myself to get through a podcast talking about It's a Wonderful Life without actually tearing up. Like it's hard. Fucking that movie does me in so much. Like so. This is, if you're looking for a movie that's kind of cheeky, kind of satirical, kind of dark, but it's okay. It's got a happy ending. Even the homeless guy's there as a happy ghost at the end. It's all going to be okay. You know, this is your film. If you love Bill Murray, this is very much your film. In fact, you know, as Duncan alluded to earlier, it's basically the blueprint for Groundhog Day, which is Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day is a better movie, though.
Yeah, I totally agree. But you know, ultimately, if you want to see Bill Murray be a piece of shit and be very funny while doing it, but learn a lesson and then be a nice, charismatic guy at the end, a la Groundhog Day, and you've not seen this, this is fucking perfect. And it's got a nice Christmassy vibe to it. It is a solid, very solid high 7 that could have been a lot better if it just falls short of true greatness. But if you've never seen it, it's a must watch, I think.
I think it's very memorable and like has a lot of great lines, but as I said, I don't think it really stuck the landing for me. And I really wish it would have just committed to the satire bit, because at the end, the ending just feels like a worse version of A Christmas Carol in many ways, and a less sincere version, which maybe it was going for, but it wasn't clear. And so I think that knocks it down just a bit for me, but I still think it's very memorable. I still think it's enjoyable. I still will watch this movie again at some Christmas in the future.
For sure.